What's up everyone, it's Q here. I just want to let you know that this video that you're about to watch or listen to, because it is an audio only version, this intro I'm recording right now is recorded separately much later. This is the original rough take of my history with Xbox video. I eventually compressed it down and re-recorded it a few times to be more concise, and there's a more comprehensive basically version of that video, more listenable, watchable, whatever you want to call it, version of that video here on the channel in the description below. Having said that, like I said, this is an audio only version. It is the original one. I wanted to leave it up as a comparison just so I could get the original unadulterated, unfiltered point across. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the video. 4 years. 4 years. A lot can happen in 4 years. Why are we talking about 4 years? Let's find out. What's up everyone, it's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and we're going to look at the last 4 years of Xbox. The simple reason for that is, we're going to look at the Xbox One from its original announcement through to launch, and now all the way up with its life cycle to the Xbox One X. Of course, I'm mainly going to focus on my personal experience with the Xbox One. I will throw in a little bit of just generic info as well and just general info, but I'm mostly going to focus on my experience with the Xbox One and how that is possibly indicative of the regular consumer. I realize for the most part I'm not the average consumer, but it's one consumer's experience when it comes to the Xbox One. So of course, the Xbox One first announced back in 2013 and first launched in 2013 to replace the Xbox 360, true to its life cycle, eventually releasing as the Xbox One S with its hardware revision, including HDR, smaller actual form factor, ditching the power brick, a 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray, and upscaling 4K capabilities. And of course, we'll be leading on to the Xbox One X, releasing later this year on November 7th of 2017. So that's 4 years for, we can't call it a full console generation because this is technically an upgraded, modified version of an Xbox One. For the simple reason is it will play all your existing Xbox One games, and all future games, as long as Microsoft stays true to their word, will have to play on base Xbox One hardware. So first things first, let's go back to the yesteryear of 2013. Not too long ago, but not too recent. And back in May of 2013, Microsoft announced the Xbox One. Now, there were a lot of controversies when it came to the initial reveal of the Xbox One, mainly blamed on the head of the Xbox division at the time, Don Matrick. Now, among the main concerns and the main issues that the Xbox One had in its initial reveal was things like there was a 24-hour check-in, online check-in required. It was basically a form of DRM, which is digital rights management. It's essentially a way to help prevent piracy in digital games and things like that. But the issue was that you would have to go online once every day, or at least once within every 24-hour period, to check in to allow you to play those games offline for up to the next 24 hours. In which case you would lose access to said games and said digital games and all as well if you didn't actually do that until you checked in again. Now, in the day and age that we live in, even in 2013, always online connections in most people's homes is generally not a problem, but to be forced to do it is taking away a freedom from a consumer, and it's essentially placing a restriction on them. I myself, I don't recall any time in the last maybe 8+ years that I haven't had something connected to the internet for at least 24 hours, with the exception of if my internet went down or something like that. But the point is, 99.9999% uptime, and just out of choice I would mostly keep it that because it mostly doesn't hinder my experience in any way, shape or form. But the point is, everyone reacted negatively to it, which as they should, because it shouldn't be placed upon you and you shouldn't be forced to do this, especially in consoles, because consoles themselves act as DRM, let alone the whole PC side of it, but a console within itself is literally DRM when you think about it. And this also brought up several other reasons. The main reason for this 24-hour check-in period to be able to play digital games was because there was originally going to be a no used game policy on Xbox One. That's right, how it was going to work was that when you bought a game, a physical game on Xbox One with the original plan in mind, it would come with a disc, yes, but that disc, when placed into your Xbox One for the first time, would also permanently link to your account. And this was obviously could be played digitally instead of just not needing more than a disc. Obviously, you could use the disc if you wanted for some reason, or if something prevented you from using your digital copy for some unknown reason. But the point is, you could use that, and you would have your digital version, which is why they needed the digital version of the game, or sorry, the digital version of the rights management. So because of that, you couldn't use used games. Naturally, places like GameStop and anywhere that does used games in general were heavily against this, and they were calling it a bad business decision and all. Whether it is or not, it remains to be seen. I'll get into that a little bit later in the actual video, but let's go back to the actual controversies from the original announcement. So we've already covered some of the Don Matrix stuff, like the 24-hour check-in, the whole used games policy, as well as a big thing that still lingers for the most part to this day, and is arguably one of the main reasons the Xbox One X even is going to exist, is the forced Xbox One Kinect. Now, towards the end of the 360 lifespan, Microsoft revealed the Xbox 360 Kinect, and it was generally great. It had, for the most part, it was kind of useful, kind of fun, and, well, let's just say this, it became one of the biggest selling electronics of all time, so it can't have been that bad when it came to it. However, with the price and technology and features and all of Kinect, they had to cut corners with the rest of the system, leaving it underpowered in general for not only the same price but more expensive than its competitor. That, of course, wasn't revealed until later, but the point is, Microsoft had to cut corners just to force in Kinect with every single purchase, and it suffered in the long run because of it. Like I just mentioned, performance issues ran rampant. They still do to this day on both first-party and third-party games, where games are consistently not keeping a certain resolution, not maintaining a certain resolution, or not being able to even hit a certain resolution or certain target frame rate without severe compromises. And generally, even to this day, they still run inferior in both either resolution, quality, or frame rate to a PlayStation 4 version of the game. Now, of course, this huge negative backlash was heard by Microsoft, and a lot of these policies, or for the most part, almost all of them anyway, were changed before launch, and some of them were eventually changed further down the line. For example, the 24-hour online check-in thing was removed. The whole aspect of being a physical game with a disc, also permanently tying to your account, was removed, and eventually they started selling Xbox Ones without Kinect bundled into them. And now it's nearly impossible to get a Kinect at all. In fact, the new Xbox One X doesn't even have a dedicated Kinect port. If you do want to use an Xbox One Kinect with it, you require a special adapter to be able to plug into a regular USB port on the back of your Xbox One X. So those are some of the, we will call them controversies, but again, a lot of them have been remedied. Now, the problem is that even though a lot of the ones that could have been remedied have been, there's one that is still remained to this day, and that is the performance issues. Once again, it's down to the cut corners and all on hardware just to shoehorn in that Kinect, and because of all of that, we're now seeing, more than ever, a reason to get the Xbox One X, or a reason for the Xbox One X to release. So despite all of that, despite the power differences, some of the negative policies that were eventually changed, on the run-up to Xbox One, myself and my friends were mostly planning on using our Xbox One as our main platform. We had all previously used our 360 as our primary console platform. I say console because myself and one other friend were PC mains, but our primary console focus was the 360. we were planning on using the Xbox One as our main platform. And what also helped with that was the fact it released slightly before the PlayStation 4. If I remember correctly, it was a week before, possibly even less. But the point is, it did launch before, even though it was €100 more expensive. So it kind of factored into the whole situation when buying an Xbox One, or if you only had to buy one console at a time, you just went out and got the Xbox One first. And that brings us to our launch lineup for the Xbox One. Now, I'm not going to go over the details of every single game. I'm just going to go over some of the main first and third party games. For the simple reason is those are the kind of bread and butter for a launch console and the launch lineup. So when it came to the launch lineup of Xbox One, you had big games like Dead Rising 3, Forza, Rise, Son of Rome, and Killer Instinct. Now, those were kind of the first and or whatever way you want to call it, second or third party exclusives to an extent, because obviously, yes, Dead Rising 3, Rise, and Killer Instinct eventually came to PC, but you get what I'm saying at the time, at least anyway. Now, to complement the first party games, you also had stuff like Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, Battlefield 4, Call of Duty Ghosts, the current FIFA, the current Madden, the current NBA, blah, blah, blah. So there was a decent range and a decent variety of the games. Personally, I only bought one game at launch. Killer Instinct was obviously free to play, but I only bought one game at launch, and that game was Dead Rising 3. I did technically get a copy of Forza digitally free with my Xbox One. Played it twice, mind you, just to have a look at the graphics, and that was it. So, I didn't even buy anything like Assassin's Creed. I had given up on Assassin's Creed at that point. I didn't play EA games anymore. I had given up on them at that point. Call of Duty was kind of meh to me again at that point, and I don't play sports games. So, for me, there was really only Dead Rising 3. A friend of mine, his brother bought an Xbox One at launch, and he got, if I remember correctly, Call of Duty Ghosts, Battlefield 4, and I think there was one other game. I believe it might have been Dead Rising 3 at the time as well. So there was an okay variety, even if for me there was only one game. Now, before I go any further, I'll say one extra thing, because I want to give my own personal view and my personal experience with the console. Is when the Xbox One launched, it launched on the 22nd of November, 2013. Now, because of that, I was in a bit of an awkward position. I picked mine up at the midnight launch, of course, the midnight launch going from Thursday to Friday. So I could only stay up for about 2 or 3 hours at that night playing it, for the simple reason is I was leaving at about 9-10 the next morning, or that morning on Friday, to leave for the weekend. So I couldn't get a proper time in with my Xbox One until like Sunday night. So that was a bit not too fun, you know, just spending nearly €600 on all this stuff and then not being able to do anything with it until a couple of days later. So that was a bit of an annoyance, but I'm just throwing it in there just for the sake of it. Now, having said that, I got home, I played a lot of Dead Rising 3. It was moderately fun. It was nice to see a not so much a different style on Dead Rising, because I'm a huge Dead Rising fan. 1 and 2 are brilliant games. 3 is decent enough and 4 is terrible. But the point is to see how much they changed it and how much different and how much could be done with the new technology. Granted, the Xbox One was old, out-of-date technology when it launched, but compared to the Xbox 360, it's a no-brainer. But you get what I'm saying when it comes to the improvements, the technical step forward, even if it's just in the console market. Having said that, the Xbox One did launch with a lot of missing features. Now, the thing to make this worse is these are a lot of missing features that not only had been implemented previously on the Xbox 360, but these were some of the features that had been in the Xbox 360 since launch 8 years ago. That's right. Some missing key features were stuff like the ability to see how much hard drive space you still had on Xbox One. They designed it to have a whole smart hard drive inventory management on Xbox One at launch, and it didn't work at all. You couldn't really manage it properly, for the simple reason you could only delete stuff and you couldn't see how much space was left on your hard drive. Pretty damning for games that are pretty much a big oversight for a console that's going to have games that even at launch were 15, 16, I don't know why I went 15, 16, 20, 30, 40 gigabytes. So eventually going up to 100 gigabytes in some games, but at launch, that was a pretty big oversight. You even had things like on-screen notifications where friends popped up, usually on the Xbox 360, or where they'd pop up if they started playing the same game you were currently playing. All of this was completely absent from the Xbox One. Again, it was patched in later and then patched in a better way. But the point is, all of this stuff that had been in there since, well, 2005 just was magically missing. Another couple of big big omissions was things like a battery life indicator. Originally at launch, there was no way to tell how much life was in your battery pack, or, well, I won't say in your controller because I don't remember if they even show it if you're using regular batteries, but it couldn't even tell you if you were using an official Xbox One battery pack, a plain charge kit one. It just didn't show up, and there was absolutely no way to tell until your controller died. And one last thing, as Xbox One was promised as a big all-in-one media center, hell, it's even in the name with Xbox One, they wanted it as one box to rule your living room. The point is, there was no Dolby Digital support at the time. Now, you may not think that's a huge big deal, but let's face it, Dolby Digital is the biggest, or at least it was. I think it still is at this point, even though there are newer standards. I think Dolby Digital is still the go-to. The point is that the biggest digital surround sound format at the time was not available on this console. It was not available to be used for all the new Blu-rays, all the existing Blu-rays, all the existing DVDs that could be used in your Xbox One. All the games which did not support DTS, which was the only surround sound that the Xbox actually used at the time, but the games did not support digital theater sound. They only supported either Pro Logic, Dolby Digital 5.1, or just standard stereo. So you can see why that was a bit of a problem. That was patched in later, but again, Dolby Digital present on day one of the Xbox 360 8 years ago. You see my point. Now, like I said, all of that has been remedied in some way, shape, or form, but the point is, it was a glaring issue at the start. Now, let's move on to some post-launch games and, well, post-launch exclusives and hype and stuff like that. So, Titanfall. Titanfall was the first big one, because Titanfall, if you remember, was tipped and hyped to be one of the biggest games of 2014. Only releasing on the Xbox 360, Xbox One, and PC. It was from Respawn Entertainment, which is basically former Call of Duty guys, which is why it plays a lot like Call of Duty with big mechs and stuff. And at the time, they were hyping it so much, but we could tell it wasn't going to live up to the hype. We could tell it was going to be a bit hype, but it wasn't going to live up as their next big thing. And it launched, and it wasn't the next big thing. Now, Titanfall's an okay game, okay at best, but that was it. And eventually, it didn't sell enough across all three platforms put together that eventually the sequel ended up to be multi-platform, Titanfall 2. And it had a campaign, because Titanfall 1 was only an online-only multiplayer shooter. There was no campaign. They tried to say there was a campaign baked into it, but realistically there wasn't. Titanfall 2 had a single-player campaign, as well as its big, proper multiplayer and all as well. But even Titanfall 2, across PS4, Xbox One, and PC, didn't do too well. And to be honest, I'd be even surprised if we saw Titanfall 3. So as with every Microsoft console and their new iteration, we're naturally going to see new installments in their big franchises. So we're going to see stuff like Halo. We're going to see stuff like Forza. We're going to see stuff like Gears of War, the staples of the Xbox brand at this point. And yes, we have eventually seen those. We've seen, from the Halo side of it, we've seen the Master Chief Collection. We've seen Halo 5. When it comes to Forza, we've seen, a Forza game every year, alternating between standard motorsport ones and the Horizon ones. We've seen Gears of War 4, a proper new installment now that the Coalition has taken over from Epic Games. I should also mention that, obviously, like Halo 4, The new Halo games have been done by 343 Industries and not Bungie ever since they took over post Halo Reach. So Halo 4 onwards, of course. And you had stuff like the Coalition releasing Gears of War Remastered or Gears of War Ultimate Edition, which was essentially a complete I don't feel like it's fair to say remastering, but it was a complete, let's just call it a remake of Gears of War 1. And not only that, but of course, there were third-party games as well. You had stuff like Quantum Break from Remedy Entertainment. You had Sunset Overdrive from Insomniac Games. And not only that, but you had other stuff like the, unfortunately, as of now, cancelled Scalebound from Platinum Games and a delayed version of Crackdown 3, which as of very, very recently is delayed till 2018, the start of 2018. There was also a number of initiatives that Microsoft included, such as timed exclusive games, such as Dead Rising 4 and Rise of the Tomb Raider, for example, both of which remain console timed exclusive for 1 year and PC timed exclusive for, I believe, was 90 days. Of course, Dead Rising 4 and Rise of the Tomb Raider did eventually release like about 3 months later on PC. Rise of the Tomb Raider launching a year later on PS4 than it did on Xbox One. Dead Rising 4, of course, we'll see on PS4 later this year, unless for some reason they decide to cancel it, but which wouldn't surprise me because of Dead Rising 4's very bad sales as it is across both platforms and just the general panning and quality of the game. So having said all that, Microsoft used to, if you remember, back in the 360, they had, because they were the lead platform, they had a lot of brand deals, a lot of tie-in deals. You had stuff like FIFA, where you could only get the FIFA Ultimate Team. There were certain exclusive things that you could only get on the 360 version. Even in the early days of the Xbox One, FIFA, Call of Duty, etc. had deals like these. However, that has since changed because Microsoft have kind of fallen significantly behind in the sales department, and those companies like EA, Activision have kind of jumped ship and moved over to the Sony side of it. But that's a whole other point. It's a whole other video. We're here to talk about the Xbox One and my experience with it as well. So the first one I want to bring up is the first one other than Dead Rising 3 when we covered at launch is the first, let's call it big, proper big, because Titanfall wasn't proper big, but the first proper big game, proper big installment, proper big franchise, proper big whatever you want to describe it as, for the Xbox One. Launched in 2014, Halo the Master Chief Collection. Now, Halo the Master Chief Collection was, well, it was a collection of 4 games at the time. It was Halo 1, Halo 2, Halo 3, and Halo 4. All running at better quality, better frame rates, better resolutions than their original counterparts. Of course, it did use the 360 version of Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary as a baseline, increased the resolution, the textures, blah blah blah, and of course, frame rate. They did close enough to the same thing for Halo 3. What they did was they just used better textures, or possibly even the same ones, the just original when they first developed them, and increased the resolution and of course the frame rate with the extra power. Same thing with Halo 4, but for Halo 2, they actually remastered the game and made it Halo 2 Anniversary. So there was a pretty big and noticeable improvement because that game had previously only been on the original OG Xbox when it came to consoles. Yeah, sure, it came to PC as well, but there's a big difference between the Halo Master Chief Collection, version of Halo 2 Anniversary, I should say, and what you had seen previously. Now, there was a bit of contention with that as well, because it came out that despite being a 2013 console, with the remastering and how they were going to do it, the game would not run, Halo 2 Anniversary that is, at a full HD resolution. It would not run at 1920 by 1080p at 60 frames per second. It targets 60 frames per second, sometimes it drops to below it, but it ran at a really weird resolution. It was like 1388 by 1080 or something along those lines. It's a very strange one. Just to be able to say it runs at 1080p, maintaining close to 60 frames per second. So it is what it is. But the big thing that marred the Master Chief Collection, still to this day, are the online issues. When the game launched, when Master Chief Collection launched in 2014, it was unbelievably broken online, both in co-op and competitive multiplayer. Now, It took months and months of patches and updates with multiple development teams and multiple production teams actually working on different aspects of it over and over and over all day. And it still has never been completely fixed, even here in 2017 when I say this. Now, at the same time, this doesn't really hinder the enjoyment of the campaigns. I personally am a huge Halo fan. I love the Halo stories, I love the Halo campaign gameplay. There's so much about the Halo campaigns I love. And personally, I'd still recommend the Master Chief Collection to anyone just for the stories and the single player aspect of it. But the point is, I have, despite the massive online issues, which didn't really affect me too much because I'm not a big competitive multiplayer guy anymore, that when it comes to the Master Chief Collection, I have a crap load of fun with it. And I have got a serious amount of time invested into that game. And it's just pure enjoyment. Now, before we dwell on that one too much, we'll move forward. Halo 5, the next big one when it came to... Well, actually, no, let's backpedal it one bit. There was technically, before Halo 5, we had Gears of War Ultimate Edition. And Gears of War Ultimate Edition gave us Gears of War 1 remastered, basically, by the Coalition. They've been quoted as saying that it gave them a chance to work on Xbox One architecture with Xbox One hardware and squeeze out what they could of it. Unfortunately, Gears of War Ultimate Edition didn't come with the best of performance and the best of quality and all as well. Still a decent game and a decent remaster. To be honest, it's still not a patch on the original PC version of Gears of War, which, if you ask me, as a huge Gears of War fan with over hundreds of hours across all the Gears of War games, except for Gears of War Judgment, if you ask me, that the PC version still remains, the PC version of the original still remains the most definitive Gears experience in my opinion. So the point is, it gave them a chance to do it, as well as actually it gave people a chance to play Gears of War again in better, higher quality, remastered quality, whatever way you want to look at it, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing when it came down to it. So that was pretty good, and that was 2015, so there was still a little bit more in there because we were a ways off before we got Gears of War 4. So also staying in 2015 was Halo 5. Now Halo 5 is a big divisive game for the simple reason is, while the gameplay itself isn't terrible, the story and the branching, I won't say branching narrative, but the split narrative that Halo 5 and the story in kind of shared by both is pretty damn shite. If you ask me, it's just pretty shite. And while the end of Halo 5, in the legendary ending at least anyway, while it gives a potential for an amazing Halo 6, the point is the Halo 5 was kind of a flop and kind of a letdown. Now, they also completely changed up the multiplayer aspect of it as well, because they had originally changed it from Halo Reach to Halo 4, and then again with Halo 5, but this time it's completely different. Eventually, because I'm not a big fan of competitive multiplayer anymore, they did patch in Warzone Firefight, which I am a big fan of, and I play almost every single day. At least one game almost every single day. And I have huge, immense amounts of fun with Halo Warzone Firefight ever since they added in. I have almost all the recs at this point. I'm probably about 80% of permanent rec unlocks. I'm level like maybe 150 or so, maybe 140, 150. Still pretty damn fun when it comes to my enjoyment and all of it. Now, that brings us forward a bit again to Gears of War 4. I'm mostly sticking to, because I'm just talking about my experiences with this, you can find out that I'm mostly just sticking to games that I have. Gears of War 4 is probably the next big one that comes into it. Obviously, after Microsoft acquired the license to Gears of War, we wanted to see what was going to come with it, what was going to be new with it, because we knew eventually that something was going to happen. Because Gears of War was a huge franchise on the 360, and there's no way Microsoft were just going to let it fall by the wayside. Luckily, Gears of War 4 came out. Everyone was very worried in the upcoming run-up to release, because, well, there was a lot of stuff we weren't sure about, as well as the fact that the Coalition hadn't proven himself just yet. The only thing they had done was, I won't say lackluster remaster, but it was a lukewarm remaster of an existing game. They didn't really have anything new or anything of their own, essentially, to do with that. And Gears of War 4 turned out to be a pretty good game when it came down to it, especially because I'm a big fan of Horde and the variants of it, while not as good as maybe Gears of War 3 Horde, is still pretty varied and still pretty enjoyable for the most part. And naturally, of course, because of the Xbox Play Anywhere initiative, which they brought in, we'll get more into detail on that in a little bit, is it came with a PC copy, and that's of course always a definite benefit. Now, actually, since we mentioned that a second ago as well, when we talk about some of the actual initiatives that they've done, is in the last couple of years, the last year or two, I believe, Microsoft brought in the whole Play Anywhere system. So in first-party games, as well as certain select third-party games, you can actually, if you buy a digital copy on the Windows 10 PC store or on Xbox One, you'll get a digital copy on the other platform as well, which worked out really well for me for Gears of War 4 and for Halo Wars 2. So I technically have both of those. And they've done a couple of other good things too. They have a new, if you're a fan of, say, subscription style services, they have a new one as well, which is the Xbox Live Game Pass. It basically gives you access to about 100 games every month, or 100 games which change every so often and ever so slightly. And think of it as Netflix, but with Xbox games for your Xbox. So that's a pretty good one if that's what you're into as well. When it comes to some of the other features and all they've done is backwards compatibility. Obviously on launch the Xbox One was not backwards compatible, which burned a lot of people, but eventually they did add select 360 game support, and as of the time of recording this video, they have promised, but not yet delivered, the OG Xbox support. That's right, they're going to support physical and digital versions of select OG Xbox games on backwards compatibility for Xbox One. They've promised it, they said it is coming absolutely for sure, but as of the time of recording of this video, it still hasn't been added. But on the plus side is right now, as it stands, there's over 400 titles across 360, retail, full games, digital downloads, Xbox Live Arcade, whatever, on backwards compatibility, which is pro-consumer if you ask me. I realize they're doing it to boost their own image, but I know I've spent a hell of a lot of time playing backwards compatible 360 games on my Xbox One, so I'm definitely availing of that. Having said that, as of whenever you're watching this video, if they still haven't added Metal Gear Solid HD 2 and 3 collection to backwards compatibility on Xbox One, go and vote for that for me, because that's like the number one game I want on backwards compatibility. As of the recording of this video, it hasn't been added. Maybe it will be in the future by the time this video actually comes out, because it's going to be a while. But just vote for it if it hasn't been done. So that'll be pretty cool anyway. One other thing I want to mention that I want to talk about from earlier on in the video too is, remember when they had the whole system with the no used games, where you could buy a physical version of a game, it would come with a disc, and then you could put it into your Xbox One, and it would essentially transfer the license to your profile permanently, and that way you could do the whole 24-hour, or well, it would work with the whole 24-hour check-in DRM and the always online side of it. Now, having said that, that was back in 2013. Here in 2017, I find myself very inconvenienced with getting discs. Obviously, I'm still a big collector and of not only physical media for modern games consoles, but retro too. But the big thing is that, frankly, I've become lazy. It's that simple. When you look at my Xbox One library, at least everything I still consistently play on it, everything is digital. I have digital versions of all the 360 backwards compatible games on there. I even went as far as to pick up, because I have a physical version of both Halo 5 and Halo Master Chief Collection, I even went as far during an Xbox One sale to buy a digital version of Master Chief Collection, which I think only cost me something like €8 or €12 at the time. I don't remember what it was. It was very cheap, but it was worth it for me for the convenience, especially with how much I've actually played of the game just digitally at this point. And again, Halo 5, funny story about Halo 5 actually. Since the big, huge collector's edition of Halo 5 only came with a digital copy originally, and to much people's dismay and much people's outrage, Microsoft originally announced an initiative where if you bought that version of the game, you could contact Microsoft, they would revoke your code and send you out a physical copy, which was all well and good. I availed of that because I wanted a physical copy. Funny enough, fast forward a couple of months when I was still working in GameStop, and we were selling the dirt cheap, the huge originally €250 collector's edition dirt cheap. We were selling it down for €80 a pop. Now, me being the beast salesman I am, I could sell those like there was no tomorrow. They were shipping them to me from basically every other store because they had tons of them, just because they knew I could move them. Eventually, someone bought one because they only wanted a statue in it. And then they just turned to me and said, I don't even have an Xbox One. I just wanted it for a cool looking statue. I just said, well, hey, I'll take the game if you don't want it. He gave me the code, and now I have a digital version of Halo 5. Fun little extra bit of fact in there, just because whatever. But the point is that because my Xbox One is always online, I don't think, now that I'm in 2017, I don't think I would have minded if they had actually went with the whole, be it always online or 24-hour check-in, get a physical disc and digitally link it to your account and play it digitally that way. Because I'm just inconvenienced at this point now. Now that there's something I will reference in a moment about that as well when it comes down to it, because it's pretty important on both a positive and negative side. So when it comes to Xbox One, We've looked at most of my experience for it. And when it comes to Xbox One, there's a big problem. There's several big problems out there at the moment for the Xbox One brand and for Microsoft. Now, here is where it gets a bit dicey, because we're going to get into some negatives. It's unavoidable. We've had some good story time right as it was now, but it wouldn't be fair if I only sucked up to Microsoft and sucked up to Xbox, because I can't ignore actual problems and issues, because that's not what I do. If you're watching this video all the way through, it's probably even fucking like half an hour at this point, possibly even longer. But the point is, you know me, and you know that's not how I roll. So one of the big main issues with the Xbox One at the moment is the lack of games. The third-party games, for the most part, are there. The big name third-party games are there, but a lot of them can be PlayStation exclusive. You have huge games like Persona 5, for example, which is, as it stands at the moment, is only available on PS3 and PS4. You've got games like the Yakuza series. I could go on all day listing off all these multiple series that only get released on PlayStation or on PlayStation and PC. Again, look at the Tales of series from Namco Bandai. Another one that just popped off the top of my head there just for some reason. Now, because of some of the issues in more modern Xbox One, it was there originally at launch too, but it's even more prevalent now, especially it's more obvious because we have the Xbox One X coming out, is the hardware. The hardware of the PS4 and Xbox One are mostly low to mid-end 2012 PC parts, and that has shown its age tremendously, especially in the version of the Xbox One we have. For the simple reason is they have 8GB of DDR3 RAM, which is highly, even at the time, outdated. And I'm surprised they've even been able to do what they, as a PC guy and someone who knows PC hardware very well, I'm actually surprised what they've done with that limited hardware as it is. Because let me give you a quick example. I have two PCs at the moment. I'm not going to talk about my top end PC at the moment because there's no comparison whatsoever. But my old PC from 2012, when I built it, it was a top of the line PC of 2012, which still outperforms Xbox One and PS4 games to this day. That's right. It still outperforms them to this day. It still has a better CPU than the upcoming Xbox One X. It doesn't have a better GPU, but it has a better CPU than the upcoming Xbox One X. And that's something from 2012 versus something from 2017. So you can see why these consoles, why Xbox One and the Xbox One family would have shown their age so drastically over this amount of time, and especially now that we're here 4 years later, just on the dawn of the Xbox One X finally releasing. So we'll move on to a different point here, and while this one could be technically because of, or well, technically as an example for your average consumer, I'll give my version of it and how it happened to me. So, as it stands at the moment, I have less than 10 Xbox One games. That's correct. 4 years after launch, I have less than 10 Xbox One games. I'm not counting digital games for the simple reason is I have that copy of Forza that came with my Xbox, and I have a copy of Halo Wars 2 which I bought on PC, but I just happened to get a digital copy for Xbox One. I'm not going to count those, but the point is, when I got my Xbox One on launch day, like I said, the only game I properly got was Dead Rising 3. The next game I bought was the Master Chief Collection. That was a year later. That's right, a year later. I went an entire year without having anything that appealed to me enough to buy on that console. Now, we know early console life cycles are always pretty bad, especially this generation with the massive protracted game releases and the heavy focus on remasters at the early ones, the early times anyway, just to fill in the gaps, which kind of pissed a lot of people off. It's like, hey, I just bought these €400 and €500 new consoles not to play remastered games from the last couple of years. Why did I buy these consoles? So that was a big issue. But anyway, moving on from 2014, the next game I bought after the Master Chief Collection was nearly a year later in August of 2015 when I bought a remastered game, Gears of War 4, Gears of War Ultimate Edition. And then, of course, yes, a few months later I did end up buying Halo 5, and then a few months later Quantum Break, and again about 6 months later Gears of War 4. That's my entire library. Actually, no, that's not true. I bought Dead Rising 4 shortly after that in December of 2016, and that's it. And that comes back to another issue I talked about in a recent video. Well, it depends on when I actually release this, how recent it will be, but I haven't bought a single Xbox One game this year, and I don't plan on buying a single Xbox One game of 2017, which is definitely a huge issue, and especially with Crackdown's delay and Scalebound's cancellation. Even though I'm not going to buy Crackdown 3, it essentially takes away what would be a big game from the 2017 lineup. So that can be a pretty bad sign. So we've seen how it can go extended periods of time without having a new game to offer and without buying a new game. What I actually compared this to was I compare the Xbox One akin to my PlayStation 3. During the previous generation, because the 360 was my primary platform, and I have over 100 360 games, the PlayStation 3 was only for exclusives and for stuff that you could only buy on PlayStation 3. My Xbox One is basically the equivalent of that, and having said that, it's becoming less and less even as useful as that, because now all these games are becoming available on superior form on PC. So you can see where my concern would be when it comes to Xbox One. So that really covers the whole bad 2017 lineup as well, especially when it comes to Xbox One X, which we'll talk to now in a second. But the sheer lineup is, realistically, there's only 3 proper exclusives for 2017 for Xbox One. I won't even say proper exclusives, because they'll be available on PC too, but they won't be available on PlayStation. Those games, of course, are Halo Wars 2, Super Lucky's Tale, which isn't even a big game to be honest, and Forza. So Forza, yeah, will do pretty damn well, as Forza usually does, but Super Lucky's Tale and Halo Wars 2, it's just not enough. And considering that more and more people are moving away from Xbox, and more developers, I should say, are moving away from Xbox to an extent, you can see why it's a bit of an issue. So that brings us back to Xbox One X, and the reason why this video is even existing, and the reason why this video is being recorded. So I'll say shortly, because I don't want to give away the exact time this video was recorded. It's going to be recorded multiple different parts over multiple different time periods, but the point is, I don't want to talk about when it actually is being recorded, or any of the parts are being recorded. The upcoming Xbox One X, the console that is billed as the most powerful console ever made, which yes is true, but obviously it's not the most powerful system because PC absolutely destroys it, but it is the most powerful console ever made at the time. Now, having said that, it offers superior performance to any other console out there, but it doesn't deliver on its promised performance, and everything that they've promised about it is falling true. For example, it won't deliver the true 4K like they always claimed, Microsoft that is. It won't deliver your uncompromised games, your uncompromised 4K, it won't deliver your 60 frames per second, and this ties in with a couple of other issues. With the huge bad lineup of 2017 as it is, because don't forget, November 7, 2017 is when the Xbox One X is going to launch. I think it's going to sell in pretty small numbers. It'll probably sell pretty well for the first couple of weeks or the first month or whatever. But the fact is, it's an enthusiast grade console. I realize those two words don't really go together, enthusiast and console. But the point is, I don't think it's going to be a game changer. We have a lot of problems with resolution, with frame rates, etc., etc. Xbox One X isn't going to solve that. For the simple reason is you're asking people to spend €500 more on the Xbox One X over your already existing Xbox One. And it's just not going to do it. And I think the attach rate for Xbox One X will be very low. I think maybe 1 in maybe 20 Xboxes sold will be an Xbox One X. I myself am getting one. And despite the performance promises that have fell through and turned out to be a sham and shenanigans at this point, I'm not against games running at 1800p on an Xbox One X. I'm not against them running at some sort of really high checkerboard resolution or whatever. What I am adverse to is Microsoft billing this as your true 4K uncompromised 60 frames per second console, which it just isn't. That's the issue I take with it. And don't forget, I'm getting an Xbox One X, even though for the most part, I'll probably only ever get to use, what's the game called? Halo 5 and possibly even the Master Chief Collection on it. Wow, that kind of sounds sad, doesn't it? But anyway, we'll see how it goes in the future. Maybe I'll have to rebuy a couple of games on Xbox One after they've been patched with it. Although technically I do plan on buying Kingdom Hearts 3 on Xbox One, because if it takes advantage of Xbox One X, it promises to be even better than the PlayStation 4 Pro version. So, overall, I feel like we've covered the general positives, the general negatives, as well as my own personal positives and my own personal negatives with it. So despite me not using my Xbox One for protracted periods over these years, like for example, maybe a month after Dead Rising 3 came out, I didn't touch my Xbox One for almost a year, and then there was the whole issues with the Master Chief Collection for like 6+ months. The problem is, I don't know if I want to call it, I won't call it a failed console. I won't call it a bad console. I just wish it wasn't in the position that it's in. And what I mean by that is I wish it wasn't in the hardware position that it's in. Because if it wasn't, I think it would have done a significant lot better. Maybe not won the current ongoing console war, but I don't think it would be less than 50% of the sales of the PlayStation 4 if it hadn't been crippled and hobbled from the get-go by Don Matrick and many of his bullshit practices. So I don't like that it's in that position, because despite whatever issues I've had or whatever issues I haven't had with the Xbox One, when I play my Xbox One, when I have a reason to, I enjoy it, because Dead Rising 3 was a decent game. Halo the Master Chief Collection, like I said, I can play the Halo campaigns all day, every day. I have no problem with that. It's always enjoyment. Halo 5 multiplayer, Warzone Firefight, I'll play usually at least once a day, and I enjoy that whenever I do get around to playing it. And when I had a chance to play games online with my friends on there, which again may change when the Xbox One X comes out, because myself and the majority of my friends are getting Xbox One X, so it may become our primary console platform again. it's fun overall, and my experience with it has been generally positive. I haven't even talked about some of the stuff I've done on the Xbox One. For example, I game shared with a friend of mine. He would buy a lot of Xbox One games digitally. That's how I managed to play Battlefield 1, a game which I never would have played otherwise. That's how I played a bit of Titanfall 2. That's how I played. There's some of the Call of Duty games that I skipped over the years, Ghosts, Advanced Warfare. That's how I managed to play a bunch of those. We played a shitload of zombies together. We played some multiplayer together. We played co-oping games together. Overall, my experience with Xbox One has been pretty good when I played it. Obviously, I'm not immune to the glaring issues and the massive problems that have faced the console in the past and still face the console and will face the console in the future, but I'm just giving my experience on it because 4 years and €500 for a console, not to mention your games, your cost of investment, all of that, over that time, as well as your literal time investment in a console, you want to make sure you're getting what you paid for. Otherwise, you're just sitting there throwing your money away, hating yourself, literally wasting your time. And for me, that wasn't the case. So that's my experience with Xbox One. And holy shit, this video is nearly an hour long. Wow. I really suck at making these videos. I am sorry, everyone. It's just awful for me. But that's my experience with Xbox One. It's going to be curious over the next maybe year or so with the launch of Xbox One X to see what changes, to see if developers come back, to see if the sales come back. Personally, I don't think it'll be anything mind-blowing, but I remain to be proven wrong. Sometimes I hope I'm proven wrong because we'll see. It's only a good thing if it does get better. Even if you don't like Xbox, why are you watching this video? But the point is that Xbox One is in an awkward place. It's had a bad start from the get-go, but that doesn't mean it can't be fun. And I will vouch for that 100%. So that's it. I don't even know what to say about comment section or anything below. Just, if you have experience with an Xbox One, in any way, shape, or form, feel free to leave your fun experiences, your negative experiences, leave a paragraph on why you think Xbox is the best or worst console ever made, what you would like to see to change it, whatever, anything to do with Xbox One whatsoever, in the comment section below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Super special thank you for watching if you've made it this far in the video, because Jesus, again, nearly an hour long. I suck and I'm terrible and I'm sorry, guys. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the rest of the videos in my channel.